Hey guys, what's up? I hope you are doing good. So today I'm back with part 2 of the form stack. In the part 1 we built the backend of the application with FastAPI and MongoDB, and today we are going to build React frontend. So first let's have a demo and then we will quickly start working on the frontend. So here is the demo application. So we have our current application with login and authentication functionality, and dark theme and light theme. So this is going to be a full build with dark and light themes. So you will learn a lot with form validation and other things. So you can go ahead and create an account. So let's have a test at testmail.com. And then you can have a username, test, and then password. By the way, everything, we have validation with everything. So if I miss a field, that's going to cause the error here. So these fields are required, and then username is at least 5 characters. So we have password. We can register, and unsuccessful registration, we will be redirected to the login page where we can log in. So test at testmail.com and my password. So now I can log in. So this is the application. So we have a log out button here, and then we have light and dark theme. We can add, so here I'm calling to-dos. So we can add a to-do, like wash car, and then wash my car, and then you can set the status. If it's already done, you can set it to done, otherwise you can just leave it to default. And then you can update a to-do. So update the car on Monday, anything, you can add anything, and then update. And then if the to-do is done, we can update it to done. Same way, so you can create a new one, to do 2, and then description, and then let's set it by default as done, create, and then we have to do 2, and then it's done by default. So we have these badges showing if these to-dos are done or not, and then we have this light theme version as well. So on the front end, we are using Chakra UI. So that's what is allowing us to use all of these front end and these dark and light themes. So without any further ado, let's get building this. So now let's start creating our front end. So for that, we are going to first create the boilerplate application, front end application using create React app. By the way, if you don't have the code for the backend, so you can get the code for it from this repository. I will make sure to leave the link in the description. So if you clone that repository, you will be basically at this stage. So you will have a working backend, and let's just run the backend, by the way. So we have our environment activated. So we are inside a virtual environment, and we can run unicorn, and then app.app, let's just reload. So it will start our backend service on port 8000. So let's see what's the problem. So we have app, and then we have app. Oh, we need to move to backend first, I think. OS, yeah, cd backend. And then now we can run unicorn. So now it will be able to run our server on port 8000. And then if we go to localhost port 8000, and then /docs, we will be able to see the Swagger UI for all the APIs. So this is basically what we created in the previous part of this video. I'll make sure to leave the link of the part 1 of this tutorial in the description, and you can have that one popping up on the upper right corner at the moment as well. So make sure to follow that one before this, so you know the backend is working. Or in the other case, you can just clone that from the GitHub repository and start working on the front end, so everything will work. So we have our backend running. Let's just create our front end. So let's go to the front end folder. So for this, you need to have Node.js installed. I'm using Node version 16, so 16.4. You can use. I would recommend using at least version 16, but you can. So I'm going to use create React app command to generate the application. So npx create React app, and then you can add a dot to create the application in this current directory, which is the front end folder. So let's just hit enter, and then it will create a boilerplate code for this application. So now you need to do nothing but wait. So once successful, you will see this happy hacking. So all we need to do is just start our front end server. To start that, I'm going to use yarn here. So just run yarn start, and then this will run our development server on port 3000. So while we are waiting for that, let's add the requirement for this application. So this will start the application on port 3000. So we can just visit port 3000, localhost port 3000, and then this is the React boilerplate that you get. So let's just do some cleaning. So we don't need most of this stuff. We will be designing our own. So let's just close this, and then so this is the main entry file, index.js. Let's just get rid of these web vitals, and then this import for web vitals, and then we can just remove this report web vitals file, and then inside the app.js file, we actually don't need any of this. So let's just remove all of these, and then return a div with hello world. Remove this logo, and then we can remove this app.test, app.css, and then logo.svg, and then setup test. So just delete all of those files. So we are just left with these three files: app.js, index.css, and then index.js, which is main entry point for this. So by the way, the current create React app is using React version 18. So we are now at React version 18, and I'll later show you what are the changes that needs to be keep in mind when you are writing React 18 code. So if you go to our application now, we have an error that says app.css. Let's just remove app.css from our app.js. So we are just left with this. Now we have this hello world here. So the front end setup, the code is cleaned up. So let's just start adding our dependencies. So the first our dependencies are, so these are, let's just create another terminal here and then add our dependencies. So for the front end, we are going to use Chakra UI. So we will first add all the dependencies related to Chakra UI. So we need to add yarn add Chakra UI React emotion React at 11 version 11, and then frame emotion, we need to add frame emotion so the Chakra UI can use it on the backend. So you can just I'll leave this command in the description, so you can just copy it from there. So hit enter, and then it will go ahead and add all of the required dependencies. And then after that, we will add the other dependencies related to like Axios and other stuff. So let's just add the front end dependencies we need. Let's just open another terminal and then move to cd into front end and then install all the required dependencies. So I have this copied up. So we need Chakra UI. So on the front end, we are going to use this Chakra UI library, and all these are the dependencies that is required by Chakra UI. So we need emotion and then frame emotion. So let's just hit enter and all those and wait for it to install. Okay, so after the installation is done, we can, since we are here, we can just add the other requirements. So yarn add Axios to make API request to backend, and then we need React Router DOM, and we are going to use version 6 of React Router DOM, and then in the last we need React hook form that we are going to use to validate the front end forms and then handle form submission and all that stuff. So we need these three dependencies. So just run yarn add Axios, React Router DOM, add and then the version which is 6, and then React hook form, and then hit enter. So now that we have our dependencies installed, let's just do basic stuff to add Chakra UI in our application. So we have our front end still running, and then let's just refresh and make sure it's running, and then no errors are there. So now you can just, first you need to wrap our entire application inside the Chakra provider. So import this from add Chakra UI / React, and then you need to import Chakra provider. And then wrap this app with Chakra provider. And now we have Chakra UI in our application. So immediately you will see the fonts and the things have been changed a little bit. So refresh and make sure we have everything working. It's still compiling. Meanwhile, let's just add our React Router in our app.js. So if you go to app.js, we need to import React Router from React Router DOM. Import this from React Router React Router DOM, and then we need to import, first of all, we need to import browser router as, let's just import it as router, and then we need to import routes. We need route without the S, and then we need navigate. We'll see how many of these we need at the moment. So first of all, we need to wrap everything inside our router. So router. So inside the router, we need to decide how much, like how our pages are going to look like. So first of all, we have a routes handler. So routes, and then here we can define our routes. So first route will be, so it is a self-loading tag, and then we need a path parameter, which is going to be /login, and then element is equals to, let's just first say, for now, let's just add an h1 and say login. Add the same route for register. So we are going to first work on the register and login page, and then later we will protect all of our other endpoints and then make them the only public endpoints we have. So we will have our custom wrappers, and I'll show you how to create those and how to handle all the front-end authentication. So we don't have now anything on the routes page, but if you go to login, we should see login, and then if you go to the register, we should see register here. So right here, so we have our routing working now. So now let's just go to the login page and then start working on it. So go to sources and then create a new folder called components, and then inside the components create another folder called auth. In this one we will have all the components related to authentication, and then create login.jsx. And then I have this snippets extension installed. So React snippets, so React 7 Redux React native snippets, so you can install this. So what this allows to do is I can just type rafc, and then this will give me an arrow function. So this is just basically a utility to quickly create the React function. So now instead of login here, I can just render my login component, and then just VS Code auto imports it for me. So now login, let's say from component. So if I go to my login route, it should say login from component right here. So now we have our login route working. So let's just start working on designing the login page. So first of all, we need a flex box that will wrap our whole page. So let's just add a flex, and then this flex should be coming from Chakra UI. Oh, so VS Code is not giving me auto import, no problem. I can just import it. Import this from at Chakra UI/React, and then I need to import flex. So I need to give it a height. So in Chakra UI, you can pass all of the CSS attributes, all CSS properties as the prop to the. So this flex has some of the properties on it already, and then you can add additional CSS by passing it props. So 100 VH, we need to give it 100 VH the height, and then align item center, and then justify content, which is center as well. And then inside that we need, so this is the main wrapper of that page, and then inside that we need another flex box. Let's just add it here, and then add the styling main box, and then add the styling for it, which is direction, which is column. So if you hit Control and space, it will give you all the available options. So direction is column, and then align items center, and then we need to add the background. So since we are going to enable dark mode, we need to handle everything for that. So to add two different properties on the dark and the light mode. So suppose we want to have a lighter background, like a white background when we are on the light mode, and then dark background on the light on the dark one. We need to import use color mode value hook from the Chakra UI. Use color mode value. So what we can do is we can add the background color. Now just the background. So we see background, and then we can use that hook. So for this, I'm going to keep the theme green with the gray. So for the lighter one, we are so as you can see here, for the light and the dark, we need to pass it to gray arguments. So we are going to keep gray 100, and then for the dark mode, we are going to keep it as gray 700. So for a little bit darker. So as you move up to 900, this gray color gets darker. So this 100 is a lighter variant, and then this 700 is a darker variant. Give everything some padding. So padding is equals to 12, and then give everything around it is equals to 6. So we have our main page here. So now you can see this form component. So we will add our form fields inside this. So let's just add our form. So first we need a heading, if it's a login or login form. So we need to give it margin bottom of 6. So this MB stands for margin bottom. So we have pretty cool short forms of the CSS properties in the Chakra UI, and then that's pretty clean. And then this login component is here. So now we need to add a form, and then let's just design this form first. So we have a form control. So since we are going to use all the form validation, we are going to use this form control, which is coming from the Chakra UI. We will give it is invalid. So let's just add the React hook form first. So we need to import use form hook from the React hook form. So import this from React hook form, and then use form. So this hook will allow us to validate all of the input fields, and then show the error accordingly if the user mistypes something, or the validation is not, or the field doesn't contain validated data. So how we can trigger this is just const is equals to use form, and then we can get some cool function and properties from this hook. So one of them is handle submit. So this is a function that we need to wrap our custom handler function in. Register, this is one of the main function that will handle all the changes to our form. And then form state, and then from form state we need errors so that we can show them on the screen. And then we need is submitting, which is the state when we are submitting the form. Is submitting, yeah. So now we can just give it some name. So let's just add on submit function. Const on submit is equals to a function, and then Chakra UI will this use form hook will pass the value to this function. And then for now we can just console.log these values. Now we can add on submit to our form. On submit equals to, so this is our custom handler, but we need to wrap it inside this handle submit. So Chakra UI, or why I keep saying Chakra UI, this use React hook form can handle all the validation before hitting this submit function, before calling this submit function. And then so on submit, and then we need to wrap it inside handle submit from the React hook form. So this is how you handle the form submission with React hooks form. So now we can show if this one field that we are going to add is invalid or not. So is invalid equals to, we have errors dot. So and then we are going to call this field email. So this is error.email. So inside this form control, we need to add an input, which is coming from the input, which is coming from Chakra UI here, right here, React, Chakra UI / React. And then this is a self-closing tag for now. And then there are a bunch of options. So we need a placeholder, which is email. So we need, for the login form, we need two things, email and password. So this is the email field. And then we need a background, so we can just copy it from here and then change. So on the for the background, we need, on the lighter screens we need 300, and then in the dark mode we need 600. And then type is equals to email, and then size LG. And then let's just give it margin top to separate things out, margin top of 6. And then this is how you can handle the on change and all the validation. So with React hooks form, you can just use this function, this register function. So let's just use this to handle all of this. So as the first argument, we need to give it a name. So right here you can see name. So this is the same thing that will pop up as error.email and then error.messages. So whatever you are going to call it here, make sure to call errors.email if you call it email. If you call it password, that we will do in a moment, just call it errors.password. And then as a second argument, we can add validation for this. So for now, we can just say required. This is a required field, required to, and then you can just set this to either a boolean or a custom message. So this is required field. That's it for now. So now we need to show the form errors. So form error message component coming from Chakra UI, and then you can just show form error message. So the error messages will be handled by this these errors. So React hook form, we can just take them from this, and then from the React hook form, and then show it here. So errors.email as if there is error.email. So if there are some errors related to email, then we are going to show these errors. And then these are errors.email.message. So this message will pop up here if there is some validation error, so which is required. So if you try to submit a form and then this field is empty, this will throw error. So let's just copy and paste it and then change it a little bit to add our password field. So our password field is similar. We will just change few things. So for the password field, we need a placeholder to be password, and then the same thing, we need type to password so we can hide stuff. We need password here, and then we need to add a little bit more validation to this field, this password field. I think that's on the register page. We need to have we can say that this field is required and at least 5 characters, but for now I think this is good. So similarly, we can say password, error.password, and then error.password.message. So now we can just add a button. So let's just say what we have at the moment. Okay, so we have this form that we can type in. So why these placeholders are not showing? So placeholder, I mistyped. Probably you guys picked it up. So now we should have placeholders here. So this is, here you go, email and password, and then we can have a submit button. That's it. So form control and the form, we can have a button, and then this button is also coming from Chakra UI. Hit control enter Chakra UI / React, and then we can say login. Okay, so here's a button. Let's style it up a little bit. So we need to give it a width of 100%. So width is equals to 100%. Let's give it color scheme. So color scheme is a custom prop for most of the components inside React or inside Chakra UI / React. So we can give it a color scheme of gray, and then variant. So variant is outline. So if I hit Control Enter, I can see all the variants. We have ghost, link, outline. So I'm going to use outline, and then margin top is 6, just to keep everything insane spaced out. So now, so here you go, we have this thing changed. And then while we are here, let's just add the navigation for that button. So when the user clicks on it, we will redirect the user to the register page. So for that, let's just import navigate from the React router. So use navigate hook, and then we can call this hook to get the use navigate, or we can navigate function calls navigate is equals to use navigate, and then we call these methods, this function on this navigate hook. So if user clicks this function, this button, and then we need to have type is equals to submit for this, and then let's just add the color scheme of green since we are using green here. So this button is for login, so we will say register instead, and then on clicking this button, user will be navigate to /register, and then pass the replace to true. So now for this button, so this is the login button that will actually submit our form. So for this, the color scheme is green. That is the color scheme that we are using. The variant is same outlines, and then there are a couple of more fields that we're going to add, and then one of them is loading. So if the form is submitting, we will show this button as the form is submitting. So we are going to use this is submitting from the use form. So loading text, and I think I have all of this. So these are the fields that basically required. So color scheme is green, we have margin top and bottom, and then type is equal to submit. So if the user hit enter, it will actually submit the form. So now we have these buttons. So if you click and try to submit the form, here is our validation. So while we are here, let's just add another component to switch themes from light to dark. So inside the component, create another folder, call it theme, and then create another component called theme toggler .jsx or AFC, using the same snippet. So we have theme toggler. Here we can import the required things from Chakra UI. Import from React at Chakra UI /React, and then we can import switch, use color made hook, it's color mode, and then form label. And then we need to pass, let's just pass a custom prop if you want to show the text of the toggle. So let's just say show label to false, and then we can pass over the rest of the props. So here we can just add our React fragment and show label. If there is show label, then we are going to, so if this prop is true, we are going to show form label. HTML4 theme toggler. So this theme toggler would be a switch, and then we are going to add the label for this, and then mp equals to 0. Just close it and then enable dark theme, and then after this we can just add our switch. We can give it an ID, size is equals to sm, so we need to make it smaller. Is checked is if by default it's checked or not, so we can just take that from this use color mode hook. So const this from is equals to use color mode, so we can call this hook and get toggle color mode function, and then the other thing we need to get is color mode. So if color mode is, so if it's so it already checked if color mode is equals to dark. So if color mode is dark, we need to show it that this button is checked, and then is disabled is equals to false. We can just manipulate all of these with this rest prop, but let's just give it the value, which is the most important thing here. Value is equals to color mode. Color scheme is green. And then margin right. Of 2. And on change is the most important thing, which will toggle our color mode using this function. And then you can just separate the rest of the props. So our function, so this theme toggler is ready. Let's just use it here inside this login form. Right before this button, we are going to show this component. Let's just try to auto import it, and then this works this time. So now let's just go to our form, and then here is our toggle button. So we can use this to enable the toggle and toggle theme. By the way, we can pass our show label prop to true, and it will show if we want to enable dark theme, right? So let's just center this thing up. Oh, we need to keep it outside this form, so we need to keep both of these outside this form. Okay, so just end form component after this. Now this should be centered like this. So we just need these three inside the form label: email field, password field, and the login button. So that's it. So here we have it. We have our login, and then if we go this, we are now at our register page. So let's just create a register component pretty quick. So inside the auth, create another file, register.jsx, and using the same snippet, rafc, and then our register component is going to be pretty much the same as a login component. So let me just copy and paste everything from the login component. So copy and then paste. Now I can go here let's just copy everything and then copy here, and then if I can copy and paste. Yeah, now so expert accounts, instead of login I need to call it register. So for register page we need one more field, which is the username field, and then we need to add a little bit more validation to the password field. So if we go to the, so let's just add the username field first. So we need to add another form control. So right after the email I need to add another form control. So this form control contains this form control is for the username. Why is giving me this weird error? What it says? There's no corresponding closing tag. Oh, okay. So I think I need to close it here. So right after, before this form control, I need to control this form control. So now it should not complain. So this is the placeholder for this is username, and then we added our type, which is text, variant is filled, and then size is large for this field. So this is basically the same thing like this, but here we are adding a little bit more validation. So minimum length is 5, and then if this is not if the user is not typing 5 characters, it will show this message here. So errors.username, and then we need to give the password a little bit more validation as well. So it is required min length of the password should be, so min length value should at least be 5 characters, and then if it's not, show the message of password should at least be 5 characters. Password must be at least 5 characters long. And then for the max length, we can show similar. So for the max length, we need the value to be 24. So we are not allowing more than 24 characters as password. And then the message should be, password must be at most 24 characters. So these are our custom messages, and then other than that we can just navigate it to /login and then login instead. So that's all we need to do on the register page, or at least that's what I think, if I'm not forgetting anything. Let's just refresh it, and we should have a register form here. If we go here, we need to render register, and now it should render our register page. So here you go, we have email, username, password, and then instead of login, let's just say register. So we have a login button here. So here, so now it says register. We can toggle between login and register page. That's working. We have our light and dark mode working, login. Okay, so we have our login and register form. Next we will handle all the authentication related stuff. So we will create our custom authentication scheme, and I'll show you how to handle front-end authentication with React. So stay tuned for that. So we have the login and register page, and we can switch between login and register. One thing I noticed is this heading is same for the login and register page. So let's just go to our register page and then change the heading here to register. Now we can just yeah, so that popped up here. Okay, cool. So now let's add authentication. So for authentication, we are going to handle the front-end authentication state using React context. So we are going to use React's use context hook to store all of the context or the data related to user and the authentication state. So let's just go ahead and do that real quick. So let's create another folder called context, not inside the components but inside the source, and then create another folder called context, and then inside that create another file called JWT context auth context dot not a TypeScript file dot jsx file. Okay, so since we are going to return some children's from this auth provider that we're going to build, we need to make it a JSX file. So let's just import our required dependencies first. So first of all, we need an initial state of the authentication state, which is initial state is equals to. So inside the initial state, we are going to store three things. So one is authenticated, which is by default is false. So we are going to save the current authentication state if the user is authenticated or not, and then is initialized. So this will show if the current state is the user is being authenticated at the moment, or we are making some backend calls to get the tokens and stuff. Then initialize will be true, and we will show some sort of loading spinner in that state, and then the user is null by default. And then in this user object, we will be storing all the user information like email, username, first name, last name, etc. So now let's just create our context. Export const of context is equals to create context hook from React, and then give it some initial state. Import it from React, and then we are going inside this we are going to pass the initial state of the application, which is initial. So this will be the state written by this auth context, and we need a couple of functions to handle authentication easily inside this context. So one is the login function. This function will by default is just resolves, but we will override this in our return to auth context values, and then the logout, which is from start resolve as well. Okay, now we are going to state our reducers. We are going to write our reducer and handler functions that will take different actions and manipulate this state depending upon what actions we dispatch. So let's just write our reducer. Before that, let's just write our handler first. So handler is an object with different functions. So just to keep everything tidy, we are going to write it as an object. So const handler is equals to a function, and then it will have initialize handler, and it's a function initialize handler. Okay, it's going to take a state and an action. Const, and then that action will have some payload, and then inside that payload we will have is authenticated key, and then user. So if while initializing we get the user from the backend, it means that we have a valid token stored in our session. So we get the user, and during the initialization we get the user, and then we will just save the user in our state. So what we need to do is we just need to return the updated object. So inside this function, we are going to return an object with all the previous state, and then two of is with the fields overridden. So is is authenticated to this is authenticated, so we have same key and value, so is initialized to true. So is initialized to true, and then we are going to set user to user. Then we are going to have a login function with state and action. So this function takes the same parameters as state as this initialize function. So now we are going to get a user. And then we can return the similar response here as well. So just copy it from there, and then we don't need is authenticated. All we need is to set the is authenticated to true, not is initialized, but is authenticated to true, and then all the rest of the state remains the same. And then we need a logout function. So this function will basically just take this state. So we are going to just use the state for this and reset the state to its original value. Return state, and then is authenticated to false, because now we are not going to have a user, and then set the user object to null. So this will log the user out. Now let's just write our reducer. Const reducer is equals to, so this is a function that takes a state and action. So this is the main reducer, which will call the appropriate action from this handler. So this is basically the main reducer function. It's going to take an action, and from handlers we are going to pass a key for this. So the key will either be initialized, login, or logout, and that will be inside the action.payload. Action.type actually. So action.type, if that's is inside this, also if the action.type is either logout, login, or initialize, we will just go ahead and call the appropriate function. Handlers action.type. So and then call that function with state and action. In the other case, we are going to just return the state. So this is a reducer function which takes states and action, and then action has a key called type. So that type is either logout, login, or initialize, and then we try to get it from this handlers object. If that exists on that, we are just going to call it, because it will return a function, and we are invoking that function and passing it the state and action to that function. So that is going to be either of this function, login, initialize, or logout. In the other case, we are just going to return our current state. So now we can just write our auth provider now. Const auth. So this provider will wrap our application and make sure if anything in this state changes, it will re-render the UI, and based on the action, it will re-render the UI and log in or logs the user out accordingly. So inside this, we are going to get some props, and let's just enter this error function const. So the props will have children, and then here is something we are going to do to authenticate the user if we have a valid token. So first of all, let's just use our reducer. Const is equals to use reducer hook, which is coming from React, and then we just need to pass it our reducer function and the initial state. And then it will return us the state, the current value of the state, and then a function as the second value of this array. So we are going to have a dispatch function that we can call to manipulate the state, and then invoke this function right here. So now let's just write our use effect hook to automatically log the user in. If the user close the tab and then come back, we have the session, we have the login tokens stored in the local storage. We will just retrieve them from here and then get the user state automatically, so a user doesn't have to log in again. So we are going to have a function here, since this is an async function, so it's a good idea to write this function separately and then call it inside the use effect. So this is a function, and inside this we are going to get the token from the local storage. So let's just write a try catch block here, and then inside the try we are going to get the token from the local storage. Const local storage dot get item, and then we will have an item called access token. Now we are going to check if we have the access token. We will try to validate it on the front end first. So here is another thing we need to do. So if we have access token, before we can make request with this access token from the backend to get the user, we need to validate it on the front end. And if it's expired, we will just first get a refresh token and then refetch it. So let's just quickly do that. If you have an access token or a valid access token, for that I'm going to use another library called JWT decode. It's a small library to decode the JSON web tokens. So John add JWT-decode. Meanwhile, we can just write our utility functions to get the tokens. So inside the source, create another folder called utils, and then inside utils I'm going to create another file called jwt.js, and inside the jwt.js I'm going to just write another function, import jwt decode from jwt dash and then const validate token, and we need to explore this function as well. We will accept a token, and we will check if the current time is before the expiration date of the token itself. So we need to do math.round current date, and then get the time from that divided by 1000. So this will give us the current time, and then we can just decode the token from const decoded token is equals to JWT decode, and then we can just pass in the token. Decoded token and decoded token dot, and I know that this will have an expiration, so decoded token dot exp. So we will check if the expiration is less than if the current time is less than the expiration, it means that we have a valid token, and then return is valid. So this will just return a boolean, and we will just return it from this function. So this function returns a boolean. So now that we have that utility function, we can just check it if the token is valid or not right here. So here I can type validate token and then import this. So now we are going to validate the token. So let me import the token, and VS Code is not giving me auto import. So const import this. I completely butchered that one. From go upwards and then util/JWT, and I need to get this validate token function from that. Now I have a validate token function I can use, and I can pass the access token. I can pass the access token, and then if everything is valid, this means that I need to set it on the headers of the current Axios instance. So let's just create our Axios service. So Axios service will be the service we will be using to make the request to the backend, and we need to set the authorization header with JWT token, since we are using JWT authentication on the backend. So let's just create that one. So inside the source, create another folder called services, and inside the services, let's create an Axios instance, our Axios service, axios.js. So import Axios from Axios const Axios instance. So Axios is axios.create, and then we can pass a default object. So one of the key we are going to pass to the default object is the base URL, so we don't have to type every time we make a request using this instance. So const base URL is equals to HTTP. So we have our backend running on http://localhost port 8000, and for every API we have API and v1. So this is our base URL for our backend service. This is a base URL. So we are going to add it on this Axios instance. So base URL. So this means that we don't have to write this part of the URL every time we use this instance. So if we use Axios, this instance, we will have to write every time this bit of base URL. But now I'll show you how this will save us some time. So let's just add the required interceptors. Axios instance.interceptors. So interceptors are the function that is called by Axios before or after making the request, depending on if you configure it on the request object, it will call it before the request, and then if you configure it on the response object, it will call it after the request has successfully or throws some error. .use, and then we are going to pass two functions. So as the first argument, it's going to return, it will take a response object and then return that response. We don't want to modify the response. So generally what you want to do here is just response the data from this, but here I'm just going to return the response. And then the second is how we are going to respond to errors. So a second function is called in case of error, and then we are going to just return the promise.reject, so we can get the exception in our custom handlers where we are calling this function from. Promise.reject with the error. So that's it. So that's all we need to do here. So export the default Axios instance. So that's it for now for our Axios instance. Now while we are here, let's just write our instance function, our functions, handler functions for handling the sessions for handling user session. So inside our util, let's just create another file called session.js and then import the Axios instance. services/Axios. So we are going to write two functions here. One is set session and the other one is reset session. So inside, if we have first function we have is export const set session. So what this function will do is it will do two things. First, it will take access token and optional refresh token, and by default it's null. And then this function will save the token to the local storage and then set it as the header of this Axios instance. So we have the authorization header set on the Axios instance. So when we make a call to the authenticated endpoint, we have this access token on that header. So hopefully that makes sense. So local storage dot set item, and we need to keep the key the same one. We are going to get it, so access token, and then pass it as access token, and the second argument we are going to pass access token, which is the value of this item. So like I said, we are going, so this is the arrow function. So we are going to set the Axios instance dot defaults dot headers. So on the headers we are going to set common header. So common mean it would be on all requests. We can just do it dot authorization. So let's just set it like this. Authorization header, and the value of this will be a template string with bearer and the access token. So this will set the so this bit of code will set this access token on our Axios instance headers. Else if we don't have it, we can just, so there may be some problem, and then we can just remove the item from the local storage. Copy it, remove item, and then we just need to pass the key and then remove the instance from the Axios header. So let's just copy this, then type. So to delete a key from the object, this is how you delete it. And now same is the case for the refresh token. So if we pass a refresh token to this function, so refresh token, what we are going to do is local storage. Let's just, here's a typo, refresh token, and then local storage dot set item, and it's refresh token, and then refresh token. So that's it for this set session function. So it will basically just do two things. We'll pass access token, it will save it to local storage, and then set it as the Axios instance headers. So our backend can parse this access token and then just send us the response without throwing the forbidden or unauthenticated error. Another thing is, while logging out, we need to reset this state set by this. So we will have another function for that. Export const reset session, and then this is the function that takes nothing, and then it will do two things. So it will remove two things from the local storage. Local storage dot remove item. The first one is access token, and the other one is refresh token, and then delete the header. So basically the same thing as this. So that's it. We have our two functions to handle our state. So let's just use those functions. So I promise we have all the util functions. Now we won't be writing any more util functions, I promise. I just want to keep everything clean in its separate file. So now we are just going to use our helper functions to do stuff. So we are going to set the state. So if we have the access token, we need to set it on the header. So let's just set it. So just use set session function. So let's just use set session, and then I don't have the VS Code IntelliSense again. Import this from Todo /util/session, and then let's just import set session function. And to set session function, I need to pass access token. Now I can just use my Axios. So it means that at this point, user has a valid access token inside in the local storage. I can just use that token to get the user information and then save it inside this initial state object. So this will automatically log the user in, and user won't have to type the email and password. So let's just import our custom Axios instance. So at this point, since we have set the session, we will have our Axios instance configured with the authorization header, and we can just. So now let me show you where so we have our endpoint to get the user as API/v1 users/me. And then before this, we need to add this localhost port 8000. But here, we just need to add /user/me. And the rest of this will come from here. So we will have http://localhost, all of this / that thing. Hope that makes sense. So we will await this response, and then we will have a data object here. So if you go to response, so Axios return the response of the API inside the data key. So this is the key, and then let's just call it user. So this is how you can rename a key. So it's data in this response, and we are renaming it to user. So let's just dispatch our login, our initialized. Let's just copy it to prevent any sort of typo. Initialize, and then we have type. So this is the type we are checking here. So we'll see if the function with this name exists. If it exists, just call it with this payload. So payload will be is authenticated to true, and then we need to pass the user as this user. Okay, so we have done first part, and if this request for some reason fails, if this access token is not valid, what we are going to do is dispatch initialize with authenticated to false. So user will have to add email and password again. So let's just add our so this is the one else clause, and then just copy it from here. So if you are going to still initialize it, let's just call it, and then is authenticated to false, and then user is set to null. And then inside the catch statement, why it's giving me this? Okay, I need another bracket here. So if there is any error while making this request, so this await, so if this request fail, it will throw error. That's why I wrap it inside this try catch. Let's just add basic error handling here. we need to console dot error out the error, so we can at least see what's going on with the request. And then we are going to dispatch this same initialize. Let's just copy it from here. Okay, copy this bit, and then initialize, and then is authenticated to false, and then user is null. Okay, we have quite a bit of done here. So after this we need to just call this function. Let's just call this function initialize function inside this use effect. So let's just have a use effect hook here, and then give it the function it needs. Let's just move all of this inside all of this function inside that use effect hook. So now this function is inside this use effect, and I can just call it here. You can keep it outside the use effect, but I'm just keeping it inside. So let's just call this use effect inside this function. So now here comes the problem with React 18. So with concurrency in React 18, there are certain problems currently. So this use effect, at least in development, is firing twice. So when this component loads, this use effect will fire twice. So to prevent that, let's just use our old school method, which is use ref, and then we are going to use this use ref in order to prevent the re-firing of this initialize, so we don't have two requests firing, but we don't want that. We just want this function to fire once and then get the user. So const is mounted equals to use ref, and then false. So by default we are going to just give it a false value. So I import the user ref hook, didn't I? Oh, user ref. It's use ref, and then when this calls this function, this use effect callback function, if we will check if is mounted dot current is equals to true, we'll just return from this function. And then after calling this function, is mounted dot current is equals to true. So this will prevent the hook from recalling twice. So it will just trigger this function once. So this is the problem. If you're using React version 17, that's not a problem, just leave this part. But if you're using Create React app and you started this project with me, so chances are you are using React version 18, so you need to do this part. So let's just add our remaining part of this auth provider. So we are going to export this auth provider. So let's just add an export filter here. So now just add our login and other functions quickly, so we can just use them. So just add our const login function. So login will take email and password. It's an async function, and it will take email and then password, and then it will try to make the call to the backend to get the user details. So we are going to do try catch error. So here let's just try to make the call to backend to get the tokens. So first of all, how our backend is set up is we need to get the tokens from the backend, and then after those tokens, so we need to first call this endpoint and then get this endpoint to get the user details. So if we will make two calls, First we will get the tokens, and then in the second call we will get the user and then set the user here by dispatching this login, this login function. So let's just quickly do that. So first of all, we need a function to make calls through the backend and get the tokens, get the access and refresh token. So const get tokens is equals to async email password. And then how FastAPI works is you need to send it as a form data. You cannot just send it as a plain body. At least just for this login request, since we are using that with FastAPI. So let me show you. So inside the API, if you go to dependencies, use it. So this auth to password bearer requires so it requires the form data. So email and password should be a form data. So let's just convert it to form data is equals to new form data. So this is built into the JavaScript. Data dot append name is username, which is email. So the way why we are calling this username is again required by this. So it expects it to be username, and we can call it email. Since our email is the main entry for logging in, but we need to call it username in order to be accepted by the FastAPI. So append email, and we need to do it the same for password. So let's just try catch and use our Axios to make the request. So const response is equals to await Axios instance. Axios instance dot, we need to post this data, and the endpoint for this is /auth/login. So the endpoint is /auth/login, and don't add this trailing slash, otherwise FastAPI will redirect you to this. And then we need to pass form data as the second argument, which is the body for this Axios instance. And then on a successful response, so if anything happens with this, it will just go to this error. So if the response is not good, or backend throws some error, it will go to this catch block. So we can just safely set our session here. So set session is equal to response.data. And I know that this returns. So the return of this is in refresh and access token, 2 keys. So as the first argument, I can pass access token underscore token, and then response.data.refresh token here. So this will set our current session, and then here inside this we can just throw the error. Now we have our session setup here. So this means that if we call it get tokens and then pass its email and password, if this is successful, get tokens. If this is successful, it means that and we are awaiting it, so it means that at this point we have our tokens and header set up by this function. So we can just easily make call to the backend to get the user data. So const response equals to await Axios instance node dot get, and we can use this endpoint to get the user details. So this one, so /user/me, so /user/me, and we can get the data from response. And then just recall it user. Let's just now dispatch the login. So dispatch and then type to login, and then we need to give it a payload of user. So this will automatically log the user in. If something goes wrong, we can just reject it and return. So now the last function, I promise, last function is logout, and this is the simplest one. Logout is this. We need to call two functions here. One is reset session, and then this reset session is coming from our utils, session utils. And then the other thing we need to dispatch is logout. So we can dispatch and then give it a type to log out. So this will call this handler and then log the user out. Okay, so let's just return our provider. Return dot context auth provider dot provider. Oh, auth context dot provider. What I'm doing here. Context dot. Now we have IntelliSense auth context dot provider, and then inside this we can return our children. And then this key takes a value prop, and we can pass everything in this value prop. So the state which is being returned by this reducer. Let me minimize this thing. So the state of the current user. So anything, if anything in this state changes, the whole UI re-renders. State, and then we need login, and then log out. Okay, so we are good here. Oh, we need to pass it as an object. So let's just pass it as an object. And then another thing we need to export is the auth consumer, so we can use it to show the loader. Auth context of consumer. Okay, so we are done here. If I didn't make a mistake, this whole thing should work. Now let's just go to our app.js and then work on our authenticated route. So now we need some endpoints to be authenticated, and then this if the user is authenticated, we won't allow the user to go to login or register page. And then if not, we won't allow the users to go to the home and the other routes we are going to create real quick. So first of all, let's just wrap it inside the React fragment. And then we can just import our provider and consumer from the context, from ./context/JWT context. We need to import, so auth context. I need to import auth provider and then auth consumer. So wrap everything inside the auth provider. So as soon as we wrap everything inside the auth provider, we will have authentication. Okay, so we have router, and then let's just show a spinner while the backend is in, while we are making the call to the backend to get the user's token and the user profile data. So let's just use our auth consumer. Auth consumer right before the auth provider after the router. So this will return a function with auth object. So this state object will be passed as an argument to this function. So we can check if auth dot is initialized. You can check the intelligence. If it is the case, it means that we should be loading, because the backend auto login is in the process. So we can just show a flag coming from ChakraUI. Height is equals to, so this is basically the container, 200 vh line items to center, and then justify content center. If I can spell justify content center, and then close this flex. And then inside this we are going to show spinner, and then it's coming from the Chakra UI. So we are going to show spinner, it's a self-closing tag. Thickness is equals to 4 pixels. Speed is equals to 0.65. So how fast it? 0.65 seconds. Empty color is equals to green dot 200, and then color for this is green 500. We are going to make it extra large, else we can just show all of our endpoints. So these routes should be inside here. And then one thing I forgot to add is a route that will handle all the edge cases. So currently, if we go to our application, if we don't have any errors in the auth provider, so if I refresh, I think I do have some error. Okay, uncaught. Oh, why did I add access instance.interceptor.user? It should inside access instance not dot user but dot use. Now it should at least render the UI. Oh yeah, we are back. So if I go to /route, we don't have anything running here because the /route doesn't exist here in this route. So we need to add a handler. So if route is anything that doesn't exist before this, we are going to just navigate. We are going to use navigate from React router down, and it will navigate to /. And then let's just add our / path here. And then this is just / and let's just for now render h1 here, sync I am home. So now it should pop up I'm home. So if I go to some gibberish route, it should redirect me to this I'm home. Okay, that's working. Okay, so let's see what we have left. Okay, so how I like to do the authentication, let me see if the spinner is working. Oh yeah, I saw that spinner for for a fraction of a second. So let's just look at this. Yeah, so let's just create our wrappers for the public and authenticated routes. So currently user can just go to this slash route, which is the home route, without being authenticated, but eventually I just want to allow the users, authenticated users, to go to this route. So for that, let's just create a cool little hook to use our authentication state. So hooks, and then let's just create another file, use auth.js, import is so this hook will just return the current state of the auth. So this is just a cool little, so we don't have to every time call this use context with this use context instance. So let's just create two authentication hooks. So inside the components, inside the auth, let's just create is authenticated component, new file, authenticated.jsx, RFC, and I'm going to use this from, not this, is equal to use auth. Let's just auto import, not working, no problem. Import this, from slash auth slash hooks slash use auth, and I want to use auth. So now I can just get the, by the way, we are going to pass the props and then get the props. They are the children from the props. And then these props will have a children object. We have children, and then we are going to use, let's just call it the basic auth. Okay, so we are going to use quite a bit of more things. Let's just fire a use effect here. So we will wrap all the authenticated routes with this authenticated component, and then that will trigger this use effect. And before rendering any page, we will check if the user is authenticated or not. So we are going to first check if auth is authenticated, then allow the user to, if the user is not authenticated, we just want to use the use navigate hook from the React router DOM, const navigate is equals to use navigate, coming from React router DOM. So we just want to redirect the user to /login. So as a second parameter inside this object, we can pass an object, and that replace is equal to true, so the transition is smooth, page doesn't refresh, and then we can just pass from and then we need to use location, const location, use location, coming from React router DOM as well. So we are going to just use it as from current location. We are going to redirect the user to /login. And then the problem with this setup is it will still give a flash of authenticated content even though the user is not authenticated. So it will render the UI for a little bit and then run this and check if the user is authenticated. And if the user is not authenticated, the user will still be able to see the authenticated content for a fraction of time, and we don't want that. So let's just add a solution for that. Const is verified set we are going to use a state false by default, and then else if the user is logged in, we are just going to set this authenticated is verified to true. And then here we are going to check if it's verified, then only we are going to allow. If not verified, we are going to return null. Else we are going to just return our children inside the React fragment. So this will just render the children. And then inside this, we are going to call it if authentication changes. So if the user's authentication state change or the location change, or so these are the this is the dependency array for this use effect. Okay, so while we are there, let's just create another hook for the public route. That should be pretty similar to this authenticated route. Create another one called public route.js. So if the user tries to go to a public route while he's logging, we will just redirect it into the login page, or to the home page actually, sorry. So we can just copy and paste everything from here. Control C, accept props here, remove everything here. So let's just copy the imports as well. So here we are going to check if we are authenticated, then go to /. And I think that's it. So if we are authenticated, we just want to go to this /. That's it. So now this is a public route. And all we want is just wrap it inside this. Let's just import it, import this dot / components / auth / public route while we are just authenticating. Import public route and then authenticating. So this is a public route, this register is a public route. And then this one is a authenticated route. So I haven't saved this file yet. So if I go to this, I am able to see this I am home page while I'm not logged in at the moment. I'm not logged in, but I'm still able to see. So let's just save this setup. Now it's checking for authentication. It redirected me to the login page. So if I try go to slash, it sent me to the login page. We have our JWT auth, we have our authenticated route, all the components working. Now let's just start integrating our login functionality, so at least we can log in. So for that, let's just go to login, and then here I can use the const is equals to use auth, and then use auth will return me the login function. Login, and I can just log in here. So I can just try. Wait, login and pass the values.email, and then values.password. So the form will, on handle submit, the form will pass all the values. So for this, so this register function is handling two values in this, email and password, and then when I submit this form, it will pass me in an object. So I'm just passing to this login function which expects, where is the JWT auth? If we go to JWT auth context, this login function expects email and password. So that's why I'm passing email and password. So if anything goes wrong here, let's just show a toast. So toast is a component from Chakra UI, and you need to load it from use toast hook. So const toast is equals to use toast. So this is just that snack bar or a notification component that says if you authenticate, if you are anything in the notification, basically. So let's just show that we have something wrong with the request. So we have title is invalid email, or so if this login request fails and we have some error, it means that the email or password is wrong. And then so the status, we need to so this toast component has many different UIs. So it is green when you give it success, or to render a red one, we are going to give it the error. So it's red, and with the cross is closable to true. So user can just press the cross icon, and then duration for how long we are going to show this in milliseconds. So 1500. So 1.5 seconds. I think it's good enough. Let's just make it async function. So now if our auth context is all of these functions work fine, we should at least be able to log in. I don't know any user I have at the moment, so let's just try. No. Okay, so this was error I was expecting. So this is the course error given by the FastAPI. So we are actually sending requests from localhost port 3000 to localhost port 8000. So that's where the security comes in. And so for this, we need to tell the FastAPI backend, hey, I am the one requesting from the backend. So please accept the request, requesting from the front end, and please accept the request from this localhost port 3000. So for that, let's just go to our app.py file and then add a middleware. So on this app.middle app.add underscore middleware, and we need to import from FastAPI middlewares. Middleware dot course import. If I can type import, we need to import this course middleware and then pass it here. Allow origins is equals to settings dot. Do we have setting module here? Yeah, we do have settings dot. And then if you remember from the previous part 1 of this video, we have front-end origins. There should be front-end origins. Yeah, inside the back we can just add our front-end URL here. So http://localhost port 3000. So we are just telling FastAPI, hey, accept the request from this origin. So settings dot backend course origin, and then we need to just give it a few more options. Allow credentials, so it accepts the headers. Allow. Why this is not app.add underscore middleware? It should give me IntelliSense. Allow, but nonetheless, allow credentials is equals to true. Allowed methods. Allowed methods to all, and then allow headers. So this is what we are going to pass to this add middleware. Just remove this. So now our frontend should at least accept the request from our backend should request the accept from localhost port 3000. So let's just go here and then try to re-log in. Oh, I think the backend crashed. What's the problem? Unicorn. Invalid syntax. I think I missed the comma here. Yeah. So now it should be happy. Reloaded. Code and expected arguments, allowed methods. Okay, so let me see what the problem is. app.add middleware. Okay, so now it's working. And I think we have the request to our front end. Invalid email or password. So now it's working. So I know this user doesn't exist. So let me just quickly create a user here. Try it out. Email is abdtest@gmail.com. Username is equal to abdtest. Password 123. Okay, user is created. abdtest@gmail.com. Now try to log in. Now it allowed me to see this protected endpoint. Now if I try to go to log in, it should redirect me to this page, which it didn't. So request failed with Axios error. So what's the problem? Oh, I think I'm unable to log in. With my custom use effect hook. That's what I'm thinking. the problem is. So API/me failed because API/v1/user doesn't exist. Oh, not found. Headers not found. API/v1/use, not user. It should be users. I get it. So JWT context users/me. So where I typed user/me inside this initialize, here is the problem, users/me. So now this should work. Now it should automatically log me in. Yeah, right here. Okay, so now if I try to go to login, it redirected me to this page since I'm authenticated. So let's just delete our tokens from the local storage and see if that works. So if I go to the applications, this is our access and refresh token. Let's just delete those and try to refresh. It should redirect me to login page. Yeah, that's working. So our front-end authentication state, everything is working. So all we need to design is the pages for add and edit to-dos. Okay, so let's just create our to-do components and wrap our application. So inside the components, let's just create another folder called to-do, and then inside the to-do, let's just create another folder. Let's create another file called to-do list.jsx rafc, the same rafc, and then render this here instead of to-do list. Now I should be able to see if I log in. By the way, what was the email? This was the email, abdtest@gmail.com. Before that, let's just add the register functionalities really quick. So if I go to register page, I need to, let's just use the use auth hook. Once this from is equals to use auth, we need to get, so actually we don't need this use auth. We can just use our API instance to make the backend call here, and then Axios instance. Let's just try catch, and then catch. So inside the try, we can just make our API request. So const response is equals to Axios instance. Let's just create, let's just import it. Axios instance dot post to slash user slash create. So basically we'll use this endpoint, this create endpoint, to create this and pass these three things: email, username, and password. So this values object will have these three fields: email, username, and password. So we can just directly pass it and then wait for the response. Const. So if the response is successful, if we don't have any error, we can just show the toast. So import use toast, and then I can just show the toast that user authenticated successfully. We need to await it. So toast account created successfully. and then I need to navigate to login. So we will just navigate the user to login. And if for some reason, if there is any error, we will just show a toast for the error. And then we will have the details inside over. So this detail component will have the response why the request failed. So we can just show that here. Title error.data.response.data.detail. So this will have the message from the backend why the request failed. And then this is the error. Let's just wrap it inside the literal strings, even though we don't need to, but let's just go ahead and do that. So we have title, we have status. So this is the error status, because something went wrong. Is colors able to true, and then duration to same 1500. So this will show the error why the backend request failed. So now I can go here to, let's just manually log in. Later we will add a navigation bar to handle all the logout functionality. So log out. Now go to registers page, abdtest2@gmail.com, username abdtest2. Let's just for now add a username that's taken. So I know abdtest is taken, so let's just try to add that one. Register. So okay, so username with this email or username already exists, so let's just add 2 and then remove this. I know a user with this email already exists, so if I try to register, user with this email already. Okay, so things are working. So to register, now I am registered and successfully redirected to login page, and I can use abdtest2@gmail.com and then my password to login. Okay, so this functionality is working now. So let's just, before this to-do list, let's just add our navigation bar. Create another folder here, nav bar, new file, navbar.jsx, and then RAFC again. And then I'm going to use a box from Chakra UI, and then this box will have a min height. VH 100 viewport height. This box will have a 100 viewport height, and then a flex item as, so since it's a navigation, we are going to render it as nav align item center. Justify content space between. Import flex from Chakra UI. Wrap things to wrap. Padding, let's just make it p equals to 2. And then the background color is, we are going to give it a background color of green. So pg equals, use color mode hook. So we can give 2 different backgrounds for the dark and the light thing. So let's just import it from Chakra UI. So we are going to give it green 300 for the light mode, and then green 600 for dark mode. And then color of the text is going to be white. Use color mode value. What's the problem? Okay, so I think I can't use it inside the use comments calling the function navbar. That is, it is okay. We need to give it navbar. Rename this to a capital to start it from the capital one, not bavbar, navbar. And don't take this, it's too serious, so this bar B should be small, but let's just give it capital for now for bar. And then inside this we are going to show two things. One is a text component, importing from Chakra UI, and then here we are going to show it as h2. And why it didn't import it from Chakra UI, text, and then font size to 24. So this is basically will be the name of our app. Font weight equals to bold, and then footer ist, which is the name of our application. Now we are going to use a stack from. So stack is basically, you can call it a flexbox with some predefined options. So direction equals to row, so align equals to center, and then spacing between each item should be 4. And then here I can render my theme toggler, and then I can override one prop on my. Why it's not auto importing for me? Import this from and then I can override a prop which is size, which it should be large. So theme toggler, it should take rest props. Okay. So we have stack. What's the problem? CSS must have one paired element. Oh, I think that's the problem. So size is equals to large. So this will override over one of the props. So text tag theme toggler. What is problem with this? They must have a parent element. So which one doesn't have a parent element? So let's just reopen this file. Okay, so that was something wrong with the VS Code. So use a button, log out. Import button from Chakra UI/React, and then on click is equals to I'm going to use auth hook. And then get the logout function here. So on click we'll just call logout. Color scheme is equals to green. Okay. Now I can just, okay, one more thing I completely forgot about this is the outlet function. So why it's giving me this error, this weird error? So let me see if it still pops up. Okay, one more thing we need is the outlet. So since we are going to render this navbar on all the screen, the way to do it with React Router 6 is we can import outlet outlet and then render the outlet here. So all the parent of all the children will be rendered here inside this outlet. I still need to see what the problem is with this. So text tag have all. So this tag has a closing component. This one, the flex, has a closing component. Why it's freaking out? Must have one parent element. So let me just redefine it. Okay, I guess it's just a problem with. So now if I go to this, I can just add another route here and then grab the other routes inside this. And then all I need to do is give it the base path, which is slash, and then element is equals to navbar. I can just import my navbar here. So now what it will do is all the children of this will have navbar, and these children will go here and then it will render out here. So that's how you can render the navbars with React Router version. Okay, so we have our navbar. We can log in, log out. Okay, so let's just design this to-do list component. So first of all, I need a container which will just center my my content on the screen. Margin top is equals to 9, and then here add to do model. So later we will add our add to do model here, and then we need to make API call to get the to-dos from the backend. So let's start working our to-do list page, which on this page we will have all the to-dos listed, and then after that we will just add a button to add new to-dos. So let's just create the JSX for this page. First of all, we need something from React. Import this from React. We need use effect to make backend call on use ref, and then use state to store all of the to-dos. Yep. So here I have left a comment to remind myself to add a model here, but other than that, we can first have a state const to-dos, and then set to-dos use state, and by default there are no to-dos. And then here inside this container we can, by the way, let's just add over use ref counted is equals to use ref false. And then in the last, we just need a loading state so that we can show a spinner while our API call is being resolved. So loading to use state, and then by default when the component loads, this is set to true. Okay, all right. Now let's just try to use effect to make the API call. So use effect, and then inside the dependency arrays, let's just keep it empty. So I'm just basically doing the similar thing. If is mounted, then what we are going to do is just return, because this means that this use effect is firing again, and on the first fire we can just set it to true, and then here we can just call a function fetch to do. So let's just write this function real quick. Const fetch to do, and it is going to be an async function, since we are going to make the backend call on this in this function. So const, so first of all we need to set loading to true, so we can show the spinner while we are loading. Then axios instance dot get, and then the endpoint for getting all the to-dos is, let's see what's the endpoint. So it's slash to do, so slash to do, and then we can just do dot then response, and then set to do's to response dot data. Okay, so if there is some error, let's just catch it here. Error. Console.error, and then error. Okay, and then finally we are going to fire this function to set the loading to false. If you want, you can have another state for the error, and then you can set the error to true and then show the error down here somewhere, but I'm not adding it. You can add it in your app. It's pretty similar to how we are going to add loading state. So right after this, we are going to check if loading is true. Let's just set it import center from ChakraUI. So center is coming from ChakraUI. It will just help us center things inside the container. So margin top is equals to 6, so that we have a little bit of padding on the top. And then here we are going to show spinner, and then spinner is also coming from ChakraUI. So spinner is a self-loading tag, and then let's just pass. Let me just get the options from app.js, and then copy all of this. Okay, so now I have my spinner. Else, so if we are not loading, it means that our API call is successful. So we can just render things box, and then this box is coming from ChakraUI. Margin top is equals to this 6, and then render to-dos dot map. So to-dos will be empty for a little interval. So to do, get a to do, and then return a JSX. Here I'm going to add to do card, and then I'm going to pass to do as to do, and then key is equals to todo.id. So this to do card is going to be our custom component. So let's just create it, new file, to-do card.csx, rafc, my custom snippet, not a custom, but it's coming from that React snippet, and it's going to accept a prop called to-do. Okay, so let's just import it here from /to-do card. Okay, to-do card. So now we should at least see something here. Okay, we do have our token, so let's just refresh. Email is abdtest@testmail.com. Oh, I think the token expired. Oh, that makes sense. Let me see what user I created. So abdtest@gmail.com. Okay, so we are login again. //login to the bad request. What was that? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Why it keeps loading and it's not making any other request? Let's just go to network, and I want to see this request. Fetch to-dos and then axios instance.get/to-do. Oh, it's not going to be an async function because we are not awaiting anything. Now it should work. So let's just refresh. /me is working, but why it's not to-do list, and I'm rendering to-do list here. So let's just quickly debug it. Oh, found .urr. I need to return if I have the current object. So now it should work. Now it made the request, and then we don't have to do at the moment. So here is empty. Okay. That makes sense. Okay, let's just design our to-do card. Before we design our to-do card, let's add a to-do from our Swagger. So we at least also abdtest@gmail.com, and give it my password, and then I can just create a to-do so that I can just see it here. So to-do, create to-do, and then try it out. Title is API to-do from Swagger, and then first one to render on the front end. I can just execute it. To-do got created for me, and then if I refresh, I should get one to-do. It should just say to-do. Yeah, to-do card. Let's just design it now. So I go inside the to-do card, and then we are just going to use a flex box here. So return a flex box from this function, and then this flex box should be coming from Chakra UI. Okay, so let's just quickly add some props. So bg background is equals to use color mode value, and then it should be coming from Chakra UI as well. So on light screens it's gray 300, and when it's dark mode it's gray 600. So we have background, and then min height, with some min height of 3 rem, and then a margin along y-axis is 3, and then padding is equals to 3. Give it some border radius, so round it 10. Oh, I can just pass it as a string. So if I see what options I have available, okay, rounded is large, and then align item center for this flex box. Now on hover state, so this is how you can add the hover functionality in Chakra UI. So this pretty much works on all of the Chakra UI components. And then I can say opacity to 0.8, or I think 0.9 would work. Cursor to pointer. And then on the last, I just want to transform it. Transform, translate along y-axis -3 pixels. And then here I'm going to say render a text, and then this text is also coming from Chakra UI. todo.title. So now you should at least be able to see the title of to do. So if I refresh, okay, so we have it. To do from Swagger. This is the one we created, to do from Swagger. Okay. Cursor, why its cursor pointer is not working? Cursor to pointer. Okay, now cursor pointer is working, and then we need to add the badge to show if this is completed or not. So we can just render a badge. Badge is coming from ChakraUI as well, so we can just render badge. Inside the badge we can say to do dot status. So if status to true, so this means that to do is done. We can say completed, so the task is completed, else we can just render pending. Okay, so it's working now, and then it has this pending. And then to do those, let's just give it some color scheme. Color scheme is equals to, and we are going to conditionally render it. So to do dot status, if it's completed then green, otherwise it should be, I think purple should do the trick. So now at this point it should be purple. Okay, that's working. Let's just justify the content. Space between, and then this should be here, like this. Okay, so we have our card component. So while we are here, let's just give it the on click prop, so we can navigate to the details page for the to do. So const and then this should be coming from React Router DOM, and we are going to give this thing on click, and then the callback function should navigate us to a template literal. So this is a dynamic route. We are going to go slash to do underscore ID, and then give replace to true, so the front end doesn't refresh. Okay, so now I need to add another component, which is to do details page. So new file .jsx, So for now, let's just render simple RFCE, RAFC, and then this will just show this is a to-do detail page. And then here I can create another route, and this route should render a dynamic to-do ID. To-do detail, and then it's coming from this component file. So now if I go to this, refresh, make sure everything is working. Everything is working on light mode. Yeah, it is. So let's just click on it. Okay, so it took me to the to-do details page. So let's design a to-do detail page. So close this, we don't need it anymore, and then go here. Let's just import our required things. Import things from React, which is use state, use effect, and you guessed it, use refs to prevent the use effects firing twice. And then after that we will need some things from React router DOM. So import from React router DOM. So we need basically two things, use navigate, and then we will need use param so that we can get that dynamic route. So const to do set. So now we will be fetching the details of this specific to do. So to do is null by default, so we can just give it an empty object. So don't we have use state? Okay, then we need to have a loading state. So by default it is loading. And then similar thing that we did with, I can do is I can just copy it from here. Okay, now I can just do my use effect thing and then make the backend call to get to do. So use effect, I just want to fire it once, and then same thing we did before. If is mounted.current, then return from this function. Else call fetch to do function, then is mounted dot current is equals to do, and then every time to do ID changes, so get the parameter from the use param soak. So const, so what we want to do is we want to extract this to do ID from this dynamic route. So how we can do is we can just do it by using use param, and it should be use params, not use param. So use param, it should give me to do ID for this route, and then as soon as to do ID changes, I want to re-render and fetch that to do again. So const fetch to do, first of all set loading to true, and then Axios instance. Axios instance, let's see if auto import works. No. Const import this from slash, oh, it's a default export, so I can just use it from here. Copy, paste, and then Axios instance dot get, and then slash to do slash. So to get the detail of any to do, we are going to use this endpoint, this one, get a to do by ID. So we need to pass a to do ID, and it will give us the to do details as an object. So to do, and then template literal to do ID. Okay, so dot then we will get a response object, then we can set to do to response dot data, and then if there is some error, let's just catch it, and then for now let's just console dot error the error, and then finally set loading to false. So this is how our fetching logic will work. It's pretty similar to to-do list. We are finding a use effect, preventing it from refiring using is mounted, use ref hook, and then getting the actual data from the API and then setting it inside the state. Okay, so if is loading, if I think I just call it loading. So if loading, we are going to return a loading component, which is, again, you guessed it, a spinner. Copy it from here, so a container with margin top of 6, import it from Chakra UI, and then paste my spinner. So import these two things from Chakra UI. Okay, so at this point, since we are here, it means that we have to-dos. So we can just render those to-dos. So first of all, let's just add a back button. So these can go to the back. Add a container with margin top is equals to 6. Add a button, and then color scheme of this button should be gray. And then this should say just go back. Don't we have button imported from Chakra UI? No, we don't have it. So let's just add button here, and then on click, we are going to use this use navigate hook. Const navigate is equals to use navigate. So we are going to navigate to basically slash route. So on click, navigate to slash, and then replace to true. Okay, now we should have a back button here. So this should start making sense. What's the problem here? Could not validate credentials. So let's just refresh and then make sure that we are okay. So I think the token expired. So email is test abd at testmail.com. Oh, what was my user? Oh, it was abdtest@gmail.com. So now log in again. get it. Okay, so here we are getting the back button. So now let's just render our to do. So add a container, another container here. And then we are going to add some props to this one. So bg is equals to background. So background here is going to be that same use color mode value. So we can just get it from this. I think it's inside to do. Okay, so this one. But here we are going to save it inside a variable. Const background is equals to this. So we can just give pg is equals to this. Give it a min height. Give it a min height of, what should we give it as a minimum height? I think 7 rem should do the trick. And then margin y of margin along y-axis is 3. And then same is the case for padding. Let's just make it rounded, large, and align items center. Justify content to space between. Now let's just render some functionality from the to do. So render a text which says, the text is coming from ChakraUI again. So text font size is slightly bigger, so font size is going to be 22. And then here we can just add to do.title, and then add another text. And then give it a background of gray 500, margin top of 2, and then padding is 2 as well. Let's make it rounded. Let's just follow the trend and then keep everything rounded. Rounded is large. And then to do dot description. Okay, so now we should at least see the details about what to do. Use color mode value should be coming from ChakraUI. So let's just see if the UI re-renders. Okay, so this is how the to do looks like. So now let's just work on a model that will use to add or update model. So that's quite a bit of work, so let's just stick with me. So add to do model, add update to do model.jsx. So RAFC, add to do model. Let's just design this model. So the model inside the ChakraUI, you need to use it using a hook, and then that hook will give you all the controls for that model. So let's just first of all take some prop. Editable is equals to by default is false. So this prop will tell if we are going to create a new to do, or if we are just editing a current one. So default values. So if you are editing a current one, we need to give it default values, and then by default it's an empty object. And then in the end, I'm just going to give it is going to take a prop of on success. rest. So we will just call this function when add or update to do succeeds. So let's just start creating our to do model. So const, we get quite a bit of thing from use disclosure. So use disclosure is a hook coming from Chakra. So this should give us quite a bit of is open, and then on open, and then on close right here. So let's just, while we are here, let's just import toast as well. Toast is equals to use toast. Import this toast coming from ChakraUI, and then parameter will also give us to do ID. So we need this to do ID to make the API calls to update the to do, because our current backend, if you look at the backend, to update the to do, we need to pass to do ID. So we'll get that from the parameter use friends. Okay, so let's just add the state of the form as well. Let's just start creating to do, by the way, first. So box, and then import it from ChakraUI. Add the rest of the props. Inside this box, let's just add a button. So button w is equals to 100%. Okay, so this will be our main button for the model, and then color scheme is equals to green, and then on click it will handle by on open. So if it's open, it will close it. If it's closed, it will open the model. And then import it from Chakra. Use params should be coming from React router down, and then inside this, let's just dynamically, so if you are in the edit mode, editable, if you're in the editable mode, we will say update to do, which is foo, else add foo. Okay, so that's it. Now let's just render our model, and then I have few props need to pass. So model is also coming from ChakraUI, and then you can get so on click or on close on overlay. So this basically tells if we click outside of the model, don't close it. And then these are the standard option. On close, just call this function, and then is open will tell if the current state of the model is open or not. And then center, just center it vertically and horizontally, so the model will render in the middle of the screen. So I hope that makes sense. So model overlay, so this model overlay component will basically have all the this will give the model that background, that faint background, and then we can render our form. Model content, and so the content of the model, first of all we need a model header. Model header should be coming from ChakraUI, and then the header should be editable is true. If editable, then it's going to be update foo, or it's going to be add foo. So this is the header of the model. Model close button, so this is that cross button, model close button. And then after the model header, we need the actual model body. So inside the model body, we are going to render our form controls. Import it from ChakraUI, form controls. So while we are on this form control, let's just start the form handling process. So for that, we are going to use form hook from React hooks form. So import this from React hook form, use form. And then let's just set it up, const this is equals to use form, and then we can give it default values. So default values to, we can give it the default values, this one right here. So the form takes default values, we can give it some defaults, and then it will give us handle submit, then register. And then here is one more thing that we are going to do. So since our form will have a toggle button, so toggle button doesn't is not handled by this register, we need to handle it separately with this control. And then form state, we are going to have errors, and we are going to have is submitting. Okay, so we have all the required setup. So inside the form control, first of all, we need to check if there is some invalidation or not. So is invalid is equals to errors dot title, and then render input. I can just copy and paste the input from the login, because the input will be pretty much the same thing. So I can just copy and paste this bit. So let's just change what we need to change. So placeholder will be to do title, then the background is the same, type is equals to text, it's not going to be email, variant is equals to fill. And then here I'm going to give it, we call it title, since I call it title here, and then add the other. Why it's yelling at me? Oh, I need to close it. Use color mode value, and then get the input from ChakraUI as well. So min length value to 5, so min length should be 5. It's not show this message. Title must be at least 5 characters. Title must be at least 5 characters. And then the max length is 55. We can just copy and paste this thing. Change it to max length. Value is 55. Can be at most 55 characters. Okay. So now let's just render over form error messages. Control C, and then paste it before form control. So import it from ChakraUI, form error message. So instead of error.email, we need to say error.title. So by the way, I just selected this email, press Control D, it selected the next email. And then now I have two cursors, I can change the email to whatever I need, which is title. Okay, so now it's right. So now I'm going to just copy and paste this form control and then manipulate it. So this should not be an input. Instead it's going to be a text area, and then this text area is coming from Chakra UI. So it is a text area. We need to give it some rows. So this text area is for description, and then rows is equal to 5. So by default it's 5 rows, and then background is similar one. Now why I gave it type test, let's give it type text, and then I have imported form control, by the way. Oh, form control doesn't have the closing tag here. So we have text area, we need to give it all the required profs, and then here I need to call it description. This field is required, it should be at least min 5 characters, and then description must be at least 5 characters, and then must be at most 200 characters. So that's what we are allowing. Okay, so after a bit of copy and paste, we have our thing working. So control the description here. Okay, so now we just need to add another toggler. So to handle that, we can't use this register function. Let me show you how we can. So by the way, let's just first see how this is looking. So to do list, to do cart, and then inside to do list, let's just render this model. So here I'm going to add to do model. Add update to do model, and then it is a self-closing tag. Give it my, which is equals to 3, and then pass the default. So since we are on the to do detail page, we have to do here. So we will have to do in our state if we are rendering this bit. So we can just pass editable to true, and then default values to do. So for title, it should be to do dot title. For description, it should be to do dot, and I need to pass it as a object. So to do dot description, and then we need to pass the status. To do dot status, and then on success we are going to refetch to do. So what we are going to do is whenever the to do update is successful, that we are going to add in here, whenever the to do update is successful, we are going to refetch the latest to dos to show it on this page. Okay, I think the credentials are creating some problem. Let's just increase the validation time for our JWT for now. Later we can handle it. Okay, so we have 15 minutes. We can say 60 times 15 minutes. What it would be? So it's 15 minutes. Let's just make it 60 minutes. So now the time is 1 hour. So now our token will expire after 1 hour. So refresh, it should log us out, get the email. So email is abd. So incorrect email. I keep forgetting this email. abdtest@gmail.com. Okay, now we are logged in. Okay, so we are getting, this is the model, so we have pre-filled values, so that's because we gave it some default values in this add to do update model, and then we are passing those values here. Okay, pretty cool. So now if we go to my model, I can just add some API endpoints to update things, but before that I need to render my other the button that will show if the current status of the to-do is done or not. So for that I need to import control from this. So control should be coming from, I think it's coming from React hooks form. Yeah, it should be controller. So that's what we need to, so this thing, we need this. So now we need to render this controller from controller, and then this controller is a self-calling tag, by the way. Let's just give it controls of the form. Control is equals to control, and then name of this field is status, so it can pick up from this default, this status, and then we are going to render our custom button here. So render is equals to, so this is what you need to do to render a custom button and make React hooks form keep track of all of the changes and stuff, all of the changes and validation. So that's pretty cool. So this we can use form control. By the way, what I can do is I can just copy and paste this bit. So we have form label. So this part is similar to what we have in our theme toggler. So what you can do, you can just copy and paste all of this stuff and then paste it here, and then obviously change some fields. So this is HTML4 is done. So we need to give this ID and this ID the same. So field.value. So this field will give us all of the state of the form. So checked and disable all of this. So we have all of these. So now if we go here, we have this. Let's just make sure our on change is working. So okay, it's working. And then finally we need to add a button in our footer. Model footer, and then we will have a stack here, and then so we'll have two buttons. One button is to close the model and the other one is for the action. So the action can be add to do or update to do, because we are reusing this one component for two things. So button, so this one is the close button, and then give it this handler function that we are getting from the use disclosure, and then this use disclosure is handling all the state of this model. And let's just say close, and let's just disable it while the form is submitting. So while the form is submitting, this button should be disabled. So render another button. So this is the main button that will show update or add to do thing. So if you are in the editable mode, we are going to say update, else we are going to say create. Let's just give it some color scheme. Color scheme is green, and then type is equal to submit, so our form can act on it. Type is equal to submit, then is loading, is submitting. So while the form is submitting, we are showing is loading. And then finally, loading text, editable, it should say updating, else it should say creating. Okay, so now our form is ready. This is how it should look. Here you go. And we need to give this tag direction of row. So this tag direction is equals to row, and then spacing of 4. Here you go. So this should now change back to this tag. Okay, so now it's working. Everything is working here, except we need to handle form submissions. So for that, let's just have a handle submit function. Const on submit is equal to, it's going to pass values, and then let's just console.log values for now. And then how to handle form, you guessed it, we have done it twice now. So on submit, wrap it inside the handle submit function by use form hook, so it can validate and all of the amazing stuff. On submit, and then pass our custom handler function. So inside our custom handler function, we are going to do quite a bit of things. So we need to see, so we can be in either of two states. One, we are in the edit state, then we will make the API call this edit endpoint. So the edit endpoint is this one, so this put endpoint, and the other one is we are adding. For that, we will make the API call to this create one. So we will make this API call to create the to do. So let's just check if ever this is happening. So try if editable, then make the API call to get it Axios dot get over Axios instance dot put. We are going to make a put request to slash to do ID, and then we are going to just pass values. Else we are going to make the API call to the same endpoint, but this time the API call would be post, and then that should just be slash to do, because we are creating the to do, so we don't have to do ID at the moment. So the API call will be slash to do, and at the end let's just show a toast. We have toast. Yeah, I've used toast. We have toast here. So let's just show a success toast. Title, again, if editable, then the title should be to do updated, else to do edit status to success, and then is closable to true, and then at the last duration 1500 milliseconds, and then at the end we just want on success function to trigger, and then close the model. So if there is some error, we are going to console dot error the error and then show a toast. So let's just copy and paste it, show a toast which is error toast, and then something went wrong, please try again. Okay, so I guess we have our component ready. Now it has all the functionality, etc, etc. So let's just try it. Refresh. Let's just go back and then add update Todo Swagger. So Todo update, and then Todo update. This is first update from frontend. Update. Okay, so Todo got updated. If I go back, I have this updated. Okay, so the put is working at least. So now let's just add this update Todo to our Todo details page, not Todo details but Todo list page. So I want to just render a button before this one, so I can add to-dos from this page. So I have left a comment here, by the way. So add update Todo. So now it should say add Todo here and a button. Okay, so add Todo, create it, now add Todo. So our reusable component is working. So Todo title, first Todo from Todo create frontend. This is the first Todo being created from frontend. Let's just hit create. Something went wrong. Let's see what's the problem. Network create. The problem is method not allowed. /todo, and I'm going to post it. Don't we have a post endpoint? Yeah, we do. Oh, it's /todo/create. So go here, /todo/create. Okay, so now it should work. By the way, I'm also noticing that the rows, this should be not row, but rows is equals to 5. Now things should work just fine. So yeah, create. Okay, now it got created successfully. So that endpoint is basically /todo/create, not /todo. Okay, so we have 2 here. Let's just mark it as complete. So this thing changed. So we have pretty much everything working at the moment. So let me see if there is something I missed. That I don't think so. So right now we have all the functionalities. Log out, so test abdtest at gmail.com, password 123, login. Oh. Okay, so now it's working. Go back, complete it. Let's just create another user, register another user. So abdtest2@gmail.com. Username is abdtest2, and then password is some generic password. This username, oh, is it? Let's just type 4. Okay, abdtest4@gmail.com. So this is a brand new user. He doesn't have any Fudo. Let's just create one. I first Fudo. First description for. So by the way, let's see if the form validation is working. So if you remove it, okay, so it is working. Form validation is working, but I see a problem. So you see the error is here, but this field is being highlighted. So I think I missed some. So that's the result of copying and pasting. So I basically missed. This is the title. Okay, so this should be description. Now it should give me right errors at least. So if I try now, this only this field has the red accent. So create to do edit. Oh, I think I need to add on success method on to do list as well. So on success, fetch to do's. So I'm just going to call this fetch to do's. Let's just call it fetch to do's because this is going to return as the list of to do's. So fetch to do's. Now this should work. So refresh. Got my to do's. Add test to add Fudo, and then test string 1 2 3 2 3 4. Okay, so now it got edit and refetched. So last thing we need in our CRUD functionality is delete to do. So if we go here, we can just add another button on to do details page. So after this add to do model, let's just add another button which says delete, and then is loading. So this button is loading. If loading, so this means that we are making some sort of API call, and then the color scheme should be red. Color scheme is equals to red, and then give it a width of 100% of its parent, and then on click delete to do. So let's just create this delete to do function really quick. Okay, so const delete to do is equals to an async function. Does it need to be async? So since we are writing it this way, so dot then method, let's just keep the trend and then set loading to true, and then use the Axios instance to make a delete request. Axios instance dot delete, and then delete should be slash to do. If we go to do delete endpoint, so this is a delete endpoint, and we need to pass to do ID here. So let's just pass it to do ID slash to do ID, then dot then. We don't want the response, and there is no response from this API, by the way. So this doesn't respond with anything. And then we are just going to show a toast. Let's just copy our toast, our success toast from here. So toast, control paste, and then use toast. So just show we don't want this to do deleted successfully, and then if there is any error, meanwhile catch that error here. Console dot error, the error, and then show an error toast. Copy it from here and then paste it here. Something went wrong, or let's just could not delete to do. Status is error and everything is good. Let's just make it 2000, and then dot finally we need to set loading to false. So now we should have a delete button on the details page. Here you go. So if I press this thing to do delete it successfully, and then I should be redirected to /login. So if it's successful, show the toast and then navigate to /. And then do we have navigate set up here? Yeah, we do have navigate. So now all of this should work. If I go here, delete it. Okay, now I'm navigated to do one description of to do one, and then I can just go ahead and create it, add to update back, update for do. It's working. So I'll add another one, to do two description. Let's just make it by default completed. So to do two. Let's just delete this one. Okay, so all of the functionality is working. So that's it for this tutorial. The code base for this is you can just get it from the link in the description. Just go to the code base, start from the backend. If you want to work on the backend, just watch the part 1 of this video and then follow that one. So here comes the all the functionality, all the correct functionality of to-dos, and with that this tutorial ends. And until next time, bye bye.